Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you with the next update to the Conservative 2022 leadership race. So, the polling is not super consistent with this race so far, though we're getting more polling than we did for the last one, which is good. At least for what I'm doing here. So, not too much has changed, though the main... Oops, I will close that bar. The main changes here are how I am displaying the data, though there is some changes, like just to run over some off the top of my head. Charest's up a little bit, Lewis is down a little bit, Brown's up a little bit, Poilievre's down a little bit. In the case of Poilievre, it's 0.4 percentage points, so that's basically you're just a rounding error in the model. Baber and Atkinson. Baber should also be starred here. Baber and Atkinson still don't really have a lot of demographic data because they haven't been polled with the same specificity yet. Atkinson and Baber have had a couple like headline polls, but not like detailed demographic polls, so my model doesn't really work for them. Baber has some, so he's there. Like, for example, he's 0.4% of the vote share in BC. Though it's not really what I would like to see. I would like to see more, because I suspect if he does make it to verified, he's probably going to get more than 0.17% in the first round. Like, there's no way you can pass a $300,000 threshold and get less than, and only get 0.17%. I just can't even imagine that. With that, though, let's discuss some dynamics here. So, in my previous video on this, I discussed some of the dynamics in the race, specifically demographic ones, and a lot of these have actually accentuated more so since then, which is a bit surprising. For example, when you talk about age groups, Charest is now polling at 26% among 55 plus, but still a measly 10 among under 35s, and 14% for everybody else. Lewis, on the other hand, is polling 14% on under 35s, 8% on 35 to 54s, and 6% on 55 plus. Poilievre is 59% for under 35s, 67% from 35s to 54s, and 58% for 55 plus. Now, Poilievre's one is the only one that has changed quite a lot. Sorry, in phrases. Lewis and Charest have accentuated further. The trends that already existed there have gone deeper. Charest's doing even betterer among older people and stagnant among younger people. Lewis is doing... Her overall vote share is down a little bit, but it's mostly down in the two older age brackets. Poilievre, though, is roughly the same spot he was with 55 plus, though he's down about 4 percentage points among under 35s, and he's up something like 5 percentage points among 35 to 54s, which is quite an interesting result. I don't really know, I can't really pick a issue off my tongue why he resonates so much better with the 35 to 54s versus the under 35s. Maybe the housing crisis and stuff like that is just more visceral for the 35 to 54 group because they are typically the ones actively experiencing it. Inflation too tends to hit that group harder because Canada as a whole has very low savings rate. And now this is not to say retirees aren't hit hard by inflation, but a lot of retirees in Canada at the present day have a lot better pension plans, whereas a lot of younger people in the 35 to 54 market, their pension plans are basically RSP stock funds. So a volatile stock market like today and high inflation rate is quite bad for their retirement plans. Things like that. So, in a way, it makes sense why that group is strongly for Poilievre, because he's speaking on all these issues quite firmly. Why he's doing worse among younger people, I'm not sure. I could understand if he stayed stagnant, but I can't really put my tongue to why he's doing meaningfully worse. Maybe some of the other edge candidates coming in here, like Atkinson Babber or Mark Dalton or Leona Alisev. Can't think of her name off the top of my head, or how her last name is spelled off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's relatively easy to pronounce, but I can't think of the spelling. And on those last two candidates, I will add them to the model here if they get verified and they actually have relevant polling. Yeah, I know I have Atkinson in here. He has no relevant polling yet. But as you can see, the map's a bit crowded, so I'm just trying not to add too many candidates. Atkinson got approved first, so he got first veto, or the first choice here, and I'm trying to keep this to 6 if I can, because it gets a bit messy. And I will note, none of these percentages add up to 100% because everyone else is grouped in other, so it's not like I'm ignoring everyone else, they're just not separated yet. So that is quite an interesting trend there. Another very amusing trend, I can't quite tell if this is a polling quirk or if this is an actual result, is Leslyn Lewis has about 8% support among men, but 18% support among women, which is quite interesting. Everybody else, or the other candidate with an interestingly large gender gap is Poilievre, who's about 65 among men and about only 54 among women. Still the actual majority, though a notable gender gap there. With Poilievre, I can't really put anything. I can't even hazard a guess what possible trend exists that is creating this gender gap for him. Can't even name it. Couldn't even speculate if I wanted to. Now, Lewis, though, I think we're seeing with Lewis this this trend you see among female voters, because keep in mind, this is not the general population. This is conservative supporters, specifically members. And the members of any party, in Canada at least, because we don't have open membership like the US does, are always going to be to the extreme of the voters on election day. Because the party's core members are the most ideologically motivated, the most politically active, and the most politically interested people. Or else they wouldn't be active members of the party. They wouldn't be participating in a leadership race. That is not to say people who aren't in a membership of a party cannot be those things. It's just people on the party are going to be skewed that way, if that makes sense. So if the whole world population is, let's say, 20% politically motivated, ideologically motivated persons, a party's membership is going to be closer to 60 or 70% like that. So this is a particular sample size. So I don't think we can generalize this to Canadians as a whole, per se, though it is an interesting trend. And I suspect why Lewis has better support among females than males. Part of it is probably because she's herself a woman. And as much as I don't like that is a thing, that is a thing. People like voting for people who they identify more with. Not a super big fan of that. I think it's reductive, and I would prefer people voting on policy, but whatever. People can vote however they want. This is a free country. But that isn't all of it, because if it was all of it, I think it'd be slight. But this is like a staggering difference. What I suspect here is women who are politically motivated, who are strong supporters of an issue, seemingly tend to be more radical than men. Overall, women are more centrist and more agreeable than men. So men are more likely to have a strong political stance, but of people with strong political stances, women tend to have an even more strong, even stronger of a stance. So I suspect what you're seeing here is conservative-aligned women skew more socially conservative than conservative-aligned men. Because this is a small subsample of the entire population, of the most politically active people of the population in the conservative circle. So by the previous logic, you would assume, then, that women would be even stronger conservatives, typically, in this particular subsample, which I think is why Lewis gets more support about, particularly on things like abortion. Women tend to be the strongest pro-lifers. Ironically, they also tend to be the strongest pro-choicers, but that's just kind of the same symptom I just spoke of. Most women tend to be agreeable and in the middle, but the ones who have strong opinions have very strong opinions. Interesting observations you can see in data, in demographics. Ha. Fun. Now, I could keep diving into demographics and spend the entire video on this, but I feel like that will probably get pretty dry pretty fast, so I'll move on to the next topic. Though I guess for future videos, if you really want me to deep dive into all of the demographics I have education and income levels as well, and vote switching from the vote switching is the wrong word. What supporters of federal parties prefer for leader. Now, that one is like the least useful of all of these, because the NDPers prefer, or let's say the Liberals prefer Charest, which is true. That doesn't actually mean much, because most of the Liberals aren't going to join the Conservative Party to vote for Charest. So it's an interesting fact, but it's irrelevant, if that makes sense. But enough of this. If you want to see more demographic dissection, let me know, and the next time I do an update for the series, I will do it. Always do the comments. Anything you want me to do or say or cover, comment in a video, because then I will know. If you do not tell me these things, I cannot know. Fascinating, isn't it? Anyways, one thing I'm noticing in this race is not even anything the candidates are doing. There was this bit of uproar in March where, like, Brown and Poilievre and Charest were kind of trading some barbs against each other. But that's pretty much quieted down, and now everybody who's been verified is mostly just focused on their own campaigning, saying their own policies. Maybe, like, a bit of sniping back and forth, being like, this policy's not very good. Stuff like that. But pretty civil debate so far. Or, not debate. Pretty civil contest so far. But where this gets really weird is a lot of the legacy media has this weird perception that this is a very, like, dirty and mean race. And as someone who's literally following this as closely as you can follow it, I do not even understand remotely how anyone gets that conclusion, except if all you've read are articles from people like this, from legacy media outlets that perpetuate this. Like, yeah, there's some sniping back and forth, or there was, and now there's a bit of sniping back and forth on policy, but sniping back and forth on policy is not only something that you should expect, it is good. The point of a leadership race is to massage openly policy concerns from different factions of a party. It is good to have sniping back and forth about policy. Sniping back and forth among personal attacks, some of the ones we saw in March, but again, very limited, that's just stupid. Because first off, it's dumb. Like, it's a useless way to do anything. Like, it's a bad way to campaign. Second, it's bad for the party unity, which is dumb. If you want to take over the leadership of the party, it doesn't make any sense to do stuff like that. For example, Patrick Brown attacking Poilievre for supporting the Conservative government's citizenship ceremony niqab ban, or I think it's a face veil ban, or was a face veil ban. Like, not only is that dumb on its face because Patrick Brown is also part of the cabinet and didn't do anything publicly, so if he felt so strongly that it's such a bad thing and he didn't say anything, that's more of a condemnation to him than Poilievre. Because yes, you could argue that if he spoke out, he'd remove his cabinet seat, but let's be honest here. If you have a strong belief on something, and you abdicate speaking about that strong belief because you're afraid about losing a cabinet seat, you're a coward. And I don't want you to you shouldn't be the leader of a party. If you're not willing to throw the gauntlet out over something you feel so strongly about that's your opening campaign throw, you're a bit of a hypocrite. Second, it's a dumb move politically, because first off, it gives the Liberals ammunition if Poilievre wins the race, which presumably if Patrick Brown is an actual Conservative, that's not ideal. You don't want to give the Liberals ammunition against a potential leader. And second, if Poilievre's the largest voting bloc, or has the most support right now, throwing a personal attack against him, a very personal attack, is going to alienate a lot of his supporters, and they're going to stop listening to you. And if you're talking about someone who has the majority of the party supporting them, the last thing you want to do is get any percentage of them to just stop listening to you because you've pissed them off, because you've attacked the person they like on dumb personal attack grounds. It doesn't really mean anything. Especially considering in this attack, Patrick Brown is insinuating that you can't... Poilievre's policies on immigration can't be trusted. It's like, that's such a non sequitur. Like, it was dumb. But then you have another one that happened recently. This was in April. Was Charest attacking Poilievre for supporting the Freedom Convoy. Not the border blockades, which Poilievre disavowed, and the people who did actually illegal things, but like the just regular trucker who was legally protesting, and I say legally protesting because the courts literally ruled it as a legal protest. Like, on its face, that's stupid because Poilievre's supporting a legal protest, and you're saying he's not for law and order because he supports a legal protest? That's just ridiculous. Second, by polling, a very large percentage of Conservatives' supporters supported the Freedom Convoy. A very large percentage of them. I don't think it's the majority of them, though it probably is if you completely ignore people who had no opinion. But not ignoring people who had no opinion. It is, I believe, the plurality of the Conservative supporters. And it's a large percentage of the Conservative supporters who are probably voting or supporting Poilievre. So again, it's a moronic attack as it gives, theoretically, it gives the Liberals ammunition if Poilievre wins, which is stupid. And second, as Charest, you're trying to get people to vote for you in the party, because you can't just sell memberships. So it's naive to think he can sell enough memberships to dilute Poilievre's vote share without actually taking votes from Poilievre himself. Because Poilievre is also selling memberships. And to think that Charest can overcome Poilievre's initial advantage in the party plus any memberships he sells by just selling memberships is just ludicrous. That's a stupid idea. So he has to get voters from presumably Poilievre, because Poilievre has literally the majority of voters in the party right now. So you try to do this by a direct personal attack against a person for a thing that most of his supporters agree with. That doesn't make any sense. That's like attacking a fiscal conservative. You cut the budget. You reduce spending. How dare you? Anyone who's voting for the fiscal conservative, a large percentage of them, probably agree with cutting the budget spending. So it's a stupid attack to make, because what are you hoping to accomplish? It was the same thing with O'Toole in 2021 when he decided to drop or flip-flop on firearms. Who was he hoping to appeal to? The people who already did not like that policy were probably already not voting for them, because people are not idiots. This is the thing I find with politicians all the time. A lot of politicians literally think people are stupid. People are not stupid. People pay attention to politics and know way more than anyone expects. Because guess what? Most people who vote are aware voting is important. So they research, and they learn, and they watch debates, and they read the news. So they're pretty aware of all these things. Anything that's remotely controversial, they're probably pretty aware of. So it was dumb. So all this is to say, some of these barbs were really stupid. But that's not even where this is really the dumbest thing possible for the leadership race. It's not even anything to do with any of the candidates. At this point in the April 24th, when this is being recorded, and yes, I'm recording in the middle of the night again, the campaign, or the leadership contest has chilled a bit, and it's not, it seems like everyone's just email listing. Going out email listing, doing rallies, signing up members. Generic, normal campaigning. Getting your message out, getting new voters. Cool. But where this really started to get stupid, in like a monumental amount of stupidity, is legacy media takes about the race. Like, for example, I'm going to call up by name. Warren Kinsella wrote an article today in Toronto Sun saying the Conservative Party can't keep going to the right and expect it to win. And it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, let's look at the two leading people in the race. Like, I would be inclined to agree that Lewis is to the right of O'Toole. If anyone disagrees with that, you could try to change my mind on that, but I don't even know how you could possibly do that. But Shireen Poilievre, like, arguably speaking, Poilievre's a bit to the right of O'Toole, but not significantly. And the thing is, all of Poilievre's main talking points, housing, immigration reform, specifically letting accreditations and stuff happen faster, reducing government spending, just to name three, or give natives more autonomy with their money, and remove federal interference with them, to name a fourth. Like, are you really sitting here telling me, Kinsella, that these policies that he's supporting are radical right-wing policies? I didn't realize the far right was so interested in letting immigrants get their accreditations assessed quickly. I didn't realize the far right was so concerned with giving natives autonomy with the money instead of the feds managing it. Wow. Frankly, if this is the far right, they don't sound that bad. Like, if this is the far right, why does anyone care about it? This sounds perfectly meaningful. And this is the point where it gets ridiculous. It's like, they're trying so hard, a lot of these legacy media platforms and older journalists, they're trying so hard to try to make people not want to support Poilievre. They're going into lunacy. Like, another one that I see, I don't recall which journalist wrote this one, but another one I saw recently is people saying, like, Poilievre's solutions are simplistic. And it's like, have you seen campaign platforms before, buddy? Like, Poilievre's is about as detailed as any campaign platform I've ever seen. For example, housing. He's going to use the federal money that is already given to municipalities, he's going to withhold unless they build a certain amount of homes or housing units. First off, that's actually I think more complicated than most of the the Liberals. They said they're going to put, I think, $10 billion, or was it $100 million, doesn't matter, into building 100,000 new housing units. How are you actually hoping to achieve this? They don't actually specify at all how they hope to achieve this. They're just somehow using money to do this. So this is already more detailed than the Liberals' entire plan on building more houses. And second, the important thing here, we don't vote in a democracy like Canada. In our form of democracy, we're not voting for specific policies. We're voting for someone who says they're going to do things. And presumably, when they go to do those things, they're going to articulate them quite clearly, and all they have to do when they're campaigning is explain them in general terms so people know what they're going to do. If a budget, or if a platform, was the specific details of a bill that you're going to pass through the House, the platform would be ludicrous. It would be literally thousands of pages long. Like the Conservative platform in 2021 was like 50 pages already, I think, and it had dozens and dozens and dozens of like one paragraph comments on policy items. No one sits there and thinks, yes, this one paragraph is all of the detail that is going to be done. Anyone who thinks that is actually a moron. And I contend approximately 0% of people who actually vote think that the short form policy is what's going to be done. All this to be said, brain dead takes. And this is not to say that Poilievre you cannot disagree with him or you cannot attack him at all. No, you can. It's just you need to actually make an argument. Seems like a lot of these papers are just doing mind-numbingly stupid takes here. Like, one legitimate argument I saw recently, this is from People's Party, was from Maxime Bernier. His argument against Poilievre's housing policy is that, well, it's a daft policy because the problem isn't building houses, it's immigration. We need to reduce immigration rates. You can disagree or agree with Bernier, but that is a legitimate criticism you can attack or point out against Poilievre, and things like that are legitimate things to do. But saying his policies aren't detailed enough, like what that doesn't even make any sense. How detailed do you want someone's stump speech at a rally? Who wants to go to a rally to hear a politician rattle off a 5-page bill? Who wants to do that? No one. You're never going to get anyone at your rally if you're doing that. That's dumb. That's not the point of a rally. We're not a direct democracy. People don't vote on bills. They don't need to know all the details of your policy. They only need to know what you're generally trying to do. And then they need to know what it did afterwards, but that's a future problem. And there's so much of this brain-dead attacks on Poilievre. It's quite amusing. It's kind of like you saw in the U.S. with Donald Trump, and to a lesser extent with right now with Ron DeSantis, where just completely brain-dead mainstream media attacks on these politicians have taken them from joke tier in the case of Trump, or literally just some random dude in the case of DeSantis. DeSantis was literally a nobody until the media started attacking him over COVID. And these attacks took these candidates and made them credible candidates because the attacks are so blatantly stupid. Do people at these papers sit here and be like, yes, what's going to convince people that Poilievre is a bad leader and shouldn't be elected as leader of the Conservative Party? I know what I'll say. He's mean, which was actually a thing in an article. I called him mean. Another one, I can't remember who wrote this one, said he had a punchable face. It's like, what do you even mean by, what? Are we electing politicians based off of whether you think their face isn't punchable? Another one said he was a person who looked like he would be an incel in high school. Incel's my term, but he described what an incel is in high school, and it's like, First off, extreme non sequitur. The guy, or sequitur, the guy's married and has 2 kids, so clearly he's not an incel. Second, who cares? What? Just, what? You think he looks like that? That's like saying, I think the moon is cheese. It's just ridiculous. It's scientifically verifiable. The moon is not cheese. There's no data, no evidence to back up your opinion that this guy in high school was an incel. Like, what? Like, literally, what? It's actually getting so bad that the coverage of this race from most papers is, like, deranged. It's completely deranged, and I don't understand how. Like, Poilievre has almost no meaningfully objectionable policies. You can object to them in ways like Max and Bernier did, where you might not agree that they are the solution to the problem. That is a fair criticism to any policy, to say, this problem exists, I recognize this problem is real, but your solution will not solve this problem. Perfectly legitimate argument. You might disagree with Bernier's solution to the problem, but that doesn't mean his argument is not legitimate. The arguments people are throwing against Poilievre are completely illegitimate. They're all character attacks. And they're all like, what's objectionable about his policies? Name one. I challenge anyone in the comments who doesn't like Poilievre, give me one policy that he's currently supporting as leader that is, like, extremely objectionable. I'm very confused. Now, this is not to say, like, I imagine, like... Actually, frankly, I can't even really think of a policy he's currently supporting that a left-wing Canadian wouldn't support. The only thing I could think of is maybe they don't trust that he would do it. And, you know, fair enough. Trust is an important part of politics. Maybe you don't trust him. That's perfectly legitimate too. But that doesn't mean what he's saying is wrong. Your argument there should be, I do not trust him based off of X, Y, and Z. Because there has to be a reason he doesn't have your trust. If he doesn't have your trust because he's blue and you're red, well, that's just kind of silly. If he doesn't have your trust because he has done things or voted in certain ways in the past, and that has made you unwilling to trust him on these issues, that's fair. For example, I think it's perfectly legitimate for a gun control supporter to not trust Poilievre to do gun control, because historically, Poilievre has voted against gun control. And also has historically spoken against it. Or at least expanding gun control, I should say. So that is a perfectly legitimate criticism if you are a left-wing Canadian and you want more gun control. And hypothetically, Poilievre was arguing for it. He's not, but if he was, you could not trust him, and that's perfectly fair. That's, by the way, why O'Toole's position made no sense. Why would anyone who wants more gun control trust O'Toole after he said he was going to repeal things? O'Toole's just an idiot. Now, maybe some people have argued that, he was over-advised. I think that's what his own internal article or whatever review said. But, like, at the same time, buddy, you're the leader. Grow a pair of balls. And just ignore the advice you think is stupid. If you agree with the advice and you do the advice, that's on you. Doesn't matter if the advice is bad. You did it. The advisors do not control you. If they do, you should blink like twice on camera for me next time, because then, when I see you, then I know. The advisors are actually, like, controlling you somehow. That's bad. You can quote me on that. People being controlled by other people is bad. Great Canadian Bagel, 2022. Not the worst quotes you can have, and this is a completely side topic, but if you ever played a game like Crusader Kings 3, the quotes you can say in that game when you're playing with friends, whew, Out of context, you sound like an absolute horrible human being. But it's part of the game, so it is what it is. But back on topic here. I suspect at this point, not only is all this coverage going to make Poilievre probably win the leadership race, because first off, it's giving him a ton of oxygen in the media and is essentially drowning out every other candidate. And second, it's not going to meaningfully change the opinions of anyone who already likes Poilievre. Like, I can't think of a single argument I've seen, like one of these like deranged arguments I've seen, that would be like, you know what, if I liked this is going to change my opinion on Poilievre. No, none of them have. Like, he's a strong personality, and some people don't like that. That's fine. But it doesn't change my opinion on him. It probably won't change the opinion of 57.81% of conservative supporters. And that's just the stupidity of this entire race. Frankly, at this point, obviously a lot can change. Like, the debates still haven't happened, though having seen a lot of press conferences of Poilievre speaking, I'll be surprised if he does a bad debate performance, but you never know. Could happen. Though the stage is going to be so crowded, I'm not sure if you even going to have minutes to speak. That's the problem with the debates in the last federal election in Canada. There was too many people on stage, so no one got to speak. Green people are going to hate me for this, but I don't know why Paul was on the stage. She was polling at like 2%, had like 3 seats going into the election. Like, she's irrelevant. If you're excluding the People's Party, who was polling higher than her, why don't you exclude her? Anyways. Frankly, I'm not even sure why the Quebec is invited into the English debate either, or the Black Québécois, sorry. But I'm not the debate commission. Alternatively, you could have more debates, but I'm still on the debate commission. So, where does this leave us here? Well, Poilievre still has an unassailable position. And he's still on track to outperform both O'Toole and Scheer in the first round than they did in the final rounds of their respective races. Which is quite significant. And frankly, Poilievre's campaign, it would be hard for me to believe that he's selling fewer memberships than Charest or Patrick Brown or Lewis, considering the amount of people showing up to his rallies. One in downtown Toronto, 1,000 people showed up. That would be impressive in a general election for a Liberal in Toronto. Like, that'd be a good turnout. This is a Conservative in Toronto in a leadership race. 1,000 people showed up. That's frankly more impressive than the crowd of 5,000 you got in Calgary, because Calgary's the most conservative city in Canada by voting trends. So that's less impressive than Calgary. Though 5,000 people showing up for a leadership race is still pretty impressive. But 1,000 in Toronto, in a territory that the Conservatives do quite poorly, that's very impressive. And since he's buying memberships at all of these rallies, it seems naive to me that he's being outperformed by Charest or Pat Brown. Maybe they're equaling him, but I can't imagine they're doing better than him. And that brings us to another thing that happened recently. This isn't media. This was so in his Toronto stump at the Steam Whistle Brewery, I think that's what it was. A bunch of woke people tried to deplatform him, which, again, if you're a woke person, first off, I'd be surprised if I have any woke people watching me. But second, if you are a woke person, can you please comment what you find so objectionable about Poilievre, like an objective thing that he said or done? there's a lot of weird, like, what's the word for it? Like, conspiracy level thing that he's like a white supremacist, which is just, like, that's so laughable. That'd be like calling Hitler, like, a good guy to go to a barbecue with if you're a Jew. Like, what? What? Just because, first off, most Canadians are white, so the fact that his crowds look white should be expected. Second, who cares? And third, he has not said, done, or pretended to do anything that would make you think, that would make any sane person think he's a racist. So that's just, like, that is just completely deranged. I cannot even fathom how anyone could come to this conclusion. Like, again, this would be like a Jew being like, you know what, Hitler would be a great guy to come to my Jewish barbecue. He'd be such a good guest. Like, is that level of, like, what? Just, I don't understand. Anyways, back to the main point here. So the brewery, in response to this, said, we don't necessarily agree with everything he said, giving this as a handout to every single patron who came to see him speak that night. Which, first off, pretty cowardly. Like, if you are an event place that rents out your place to people so they can speak, and then you have to disavow them to the people coming in, you're a coward. Second, like all these things, and you see this a lot with right-wing politicians in general who get attacked by the woke mob. Or not even right-wing politicians, just right-wing public figures. And they're like, you can't speak because the things you say are bad. But what, and especially in the case of Poilievre, what the heck is he saying? I've watched that rally, by the way. He doesn't diverge at all from his regular stump. And the only objectionable thing I could possibly fathom for that is, like, there's some partisan attacks against the Liberals, which obviously are going to happen in a leadership race. That would happen on a campaign stop, too. Partisan attacks against the other party is a feature of politics. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's a feature of democracy. So I'm just it's cowardly, it's gutless, and the fact that they don't even point to the specific things they don't like, they just say a blanket general, actually tells you that they either have no idea what he's saying, or they actually can't find a single thing they don't like, but don't want to, but they feel the need to send this letter out anyways because they're a coward. Like, to some extent I understand, like, the woke mob and, like, social pressure and can exert a lot of social pressure, and that can make you think you have to do something. But first off, don't, and second off, you're not going to win. Like, it's such a small amount of actual people that first off, they're not going to actually affect your business if you're a business, and second, more importantly, who cares? Someone speaking at your event means nothing. It has nothing to do with you. This is a free country who, on paper, supports the freedom of speech. People should be able to speak. You cannot silo in segregating people who have quote-unquote objectionable views doesn't actually combat them. And in fact, especially on a figure like Poilievre, who's already famous, these people who are that you try to censor, who are already a famous person, who already have political clout and already have a voice, Censoring them makes them stronger, you absolute moron. You make that person illicit and interesting now. Or more interesting. And they're more illicit. It's like Prohibition didn't stop people drinking alcohol, it just made them commit crimes. Like, censoring works on, like, people who have no clout. Like, if someone's trying to censor me tomorrow, yeah, that would work, because what am I going to do? I have my 241 subs. Oh. I mean, I guess actually at that point I could probably go to like a place like Rumble. I think Rumble's a video platform. Anyways, it's more effective against someone like me. It's not effective against someone like Poilievre, because Poilievre could just go to a news conference and speak. What are you telling me that like the National Post isn't going to let him do an interview? Or Toronto Sun, for that matter? Fuck, even CBC would probably let him do a video interview if he wanted to. Like, you're not doing anything. You're just making him seem more interesting and more illicit and more edgy than he is. And that actually helps candidates. Censoring politicians helps them. Because everyone who already supported them probably is not going to change their opinion. But there's contrarians who will vote for them because the state is censoring them, or the case of the woke mob. And there's... It's dumb. It's really stupid. And the other important thing to consider too, right, is you then give this person a martyr. Like, they are legitimately a martyr now. Like, they got their event canceled or pulled. Now you've legitimately given people sympathy towards them. Like, if this was actually a person who had crappy views, let's say it was Hitler, guess what? Throwing Hitler in jail, mind you, that was legitimate, only made him more interesting and more powerful. Oops. Now, I'm not saying I shouldn't have thrown him in jail for the failed putsch, but it didn't get rid of him. That's the point. Like, persecuting someone doesn't remove them if they already have clout in a voice. And if they don't have clout in a voice, especially in the day of the internet, they can still get one. They can still gain supporters. I'll wrap that up here, though. This is getting a bit long. I'm trying to... Since I have a lot more to cover in the conservative leadership release ones, because there's a lot of crappy news, these ones are a bit longer than my normal videos. But considering the last one had pretty good reception for the channel, I guess you guys like that. If you don't like that, comment below. Like I said earlier, always comment. Comment when you ever have any opinions on my videos. Sometimes I might laugh at you if your comment is silly. There was one guy a couple of videos back who was attacking me on my result for the French election. But, like, I technically got it right. I had a bunch of error, but I correctly called who's going to the second round. So, that was pretty diluted. I definitely laughed about that person to my girlfriend. Because, like, what? He called me, like, I can't remember his phrasing, but he was like, what, like, primitive corner of the world did you come from? And it's like, first off, buddy, like, it literally says in my channel name where I'm from. Like, the Canadian isn't in there for the funsies. Like, I didn't just put that because I'll trick the people to think I'm a Canadian. No, I am. I am from the land of the Canucks, as some people call it, myself included. But anyways, I mostly get good comments because apparently my audience is just wonderful people who mostly comment constructive or useful things. So you guys are great. I love your comments. Always comment. Comment always. Also, don't forget to like and share and subscribe. If you're already subscribed, you can pretend to do so again, but don't unsubscribe. That'd be a mistake. But you can still pretend you did it again. The power. Don't do that. That's kind of weird. But all dumb jokes aside, I bid you adieu, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll be back on Tuesday with Ontario, because Ontario polls happened. Yay! I hope anyone who was looking for that series wasn't too disappointed this week, but I can only let polls exist, so have a wonderful week.